Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the RSU 14 Wyndham Raymond School District Board of Directors meeting. It is Wednesday, March 9th, 2022. The time is 6:30. We've already started the meeting officially to conduct an expulsion hearing. So we did a call to order and a roll call and a pledge of allegiance, and there are no adjustments to the agenda. So at this time, we'll move into the motion for the expulsion. I have a motion, please. Okay, turn it on.
Excuse me, I vote that the board determines that the student's actions were deliberately disobedient, that the removal of the student is necessary for the peace and usefulness of the school, that based on these facts, the board hereby expels the student effective immediately for an indefinite period of time, and that the superintendent notify the student and his or her parents of this action in writing with a copy of these written findings of fact and conclusions. If the student is expelled for an indefinite period of time, a reentry plan will be prepared by the superintendent in consultation with the student and his or her family. The parent and students have the right to request readmission pursuant to law.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. It's unanimous. Moving on to item number 7. One of the highlights of our work as a board is to recognize amazing student achievement. And tonight we are honoring 3 such students. I'd like to invite Rich Drummond up, our athletic director, to come and talk a little bit about each of these outstanding athletes. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Britt. Thank you. It's great to be here, especially on evenings like this to talk about 3 great kids. I had the pleasure to be here in the fall for a soccer team. And really, if you look at the fall, it could have been a couple other teams here, could have been a couple teams here in the winter. We've had a great year so far. These 3 kids that I'll talk about briefly, they won individual state championships in their respective sport, but they did it through a team setting and team goals. I talked to one of them, mentioned Sarah first. Right before the state competition, I was talking to her about winning states and everything, where she thought she could finish and everything. She really wasn't bothered by that. She really didn't really talk that much about it. It was really more about how she thought her team would finish as a whole. So that's the type of kids that we're dealing with here tonight. But I'll just go through quickly. I just have a few things that I'll say about each athlete. First of all, Stella Hinman, way back in the corner. She does talk. Stella, actually, why don't you come right up here? I'll put it back. So Stella is your Class A state champion in the shot put. Stella and she also finished 8th in the Mips last weekend. And I believe you threw 38 feet at New England and at states. So that's quite a distance in shot put, and that's why she's the Class A state champion. She's a 3-sport athlete. She participates in cross country, obviously indoor track, outdoor track. She has a part-time job. She's an honor roll student. I looked at her grades prior to coming here. I think her lowest grade was a 96. Very good student. She's into powerlifting. She's potentially could attend the University of Maine at Orono. She's going to a major in environmental science and forestry. And she's actually going to continue her athletic accolades at University of Maine. I believe you're going to participate if you go there for track and field. There's a couple other options on the table. But the great thing about Stella is, yes, she's the best shot put athlete in the state of Maine. But she's also a fantastic addition to the school as far as the way she carries herself and what she brings to other teams. So Stella, congratulations. So each athlete, what we do for individual state champions, they receive a plaque for themselves, their family, and then also there's another plaque that's put in the trophy case as well that stays with the school. So moving on, Sarah Hare. Sarah, you come forward. Sarah is our Class A champion in the slalom event. And she's a fantastic athlete. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But I have to note, she also won a state championship her sophomore year in the GS, in the giant slalom event. So she's really a two-time state champion. And in the middle is sandwiched in between is the COVID year. So last year, there wasn't postseason play for any individual sports or team sports. It could be said that a three-time state champion could be standing here before you. So, but to at least win two, let alone one, she's a pretty good athlete. She's also an all-state field hockey player, which is very rare to have that type of dominance in two different sports. Again, much like Stella, she's an honor roll student as well, possibly Stella. She's going to attend the University of Maine. She wants to be an attorney, which is very, very noble of you. I think that the thing with Sarah and again with Stella is they make our athletic department better, they make our school better, and they just have a keen ability to lead amongst their teams. So Sarah, congratulations. Mr. Allies. Last but not least, Aiden Cafone. Each of these kids said, Mr. Drummond, if you make me speak, I will never. I told them I wouldn't make me speak and I wouldn't embarrass them. But I just did a little bit, so I apologize. Aiden is our first Class A state champion in wrestling in the history of Woodland High School. So a very fantastic accomplishment. A little bit about our wrestling program. It's been peaks and valleys, low numbers, okay numbers, low numbers, okay. This year, we have over 20 kids participating, and it's been a huge turnaround. And Aiden has played a big role in that as a freshman. Okay. He is a state champ, as I referenced, in the 113-pound weight class. He wants to go up to, I believe, 120 next winter. Is that it? He's also a football player. He loves to fish and has a part-time job. The thing about wrestling is very, very hard. It's a grueling sport. It's very physical. But the thing with it is years ago, back in the 70s and 80s, there was a lot of ways that people used to cut weight, do things really kind of, I don't want to say underhanded, but maybe unethical, so kids could wrestle in different weight classes. That's no longer the case because we have a weight management program statewide that kids cannot fluctuate, so it's very safe for the kids. But there's still much discipline, and I've always been impressed with the wrestlers because there's 3 big holidays during the wrestling season. Yeah, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. And not that Aiden starves himself, none of those kids did. They did it the right way. But there is an amount of discipline with wrestling over and beyond. And Aiden, I just would like to commend you for what you've accomplished at such a young age. Stella and Sarah are seniors. You're just a freshman and you have, a lot of work that you can still put into it, but I think you can have a very nice career. And Aiden is also a very good student as well. So Aiden, congratulations. I'd like to thank their families for being here tonight as well. And just Luke Hare, who's Sarah's father, is also our alpine ski coach. So one of the coaches are here in the building. So I would just say that through the work of these three kids, and again, Aiden's a little bit younger, I'm picking on him, but they've been great leaders to really lead their respective programs. So this is the fun part of the job. So thank you guys very, very, very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All three of you make our SHU 14 so proud, and your leadership and your skill and your sportsmanship really mean a lot to us. So we're so happy we were able to honor you this evening and keep up the good work. Any other comments? Thank you for coming. It was thrilling to have you here with us this evening. We're going to move on to public input. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on items not on the agenda. Just a reminder, we're going to stick with the protocol of 3 minutes per person. And I think we're ready to rock and roll. Anyone wish to speak?
Hello, I'm Hannah Bernier from Wyndham. I wanted to speak again as a follow-up from last week. I was wondering if, and this is to Shar, but to anyone on the board as well, I do appreciate all that you're doing, but I had a question about something that you mentioned last week. If you meant what you said last week, or if at some point you may want to address some of the comments from last meeting. Elections are coming up, so I'm sure many people will have an interest in if you choose to respond. Stating that it's sometimes hard to hear criticisms about job performance addressing teachers or staff, about their disappointments with a few members of our community's comments here at the school board meetings. Hearing concerns is certainly not the issue. Hearing fictitious and wild accusations is where the concern lies. So I don't know if you see and hear the difference between the two. Speaking with multiple staff members across the buildings, it's apparent that having frustrations with or concerns about our school in any way is not where we feel hurt or concerned. What is concerning is having wild and outlandish comments stated with no evidence to support the accusations against our RSU and against our staff. In addition to having you seemingly support it, you may choose to clarify that. Schools and school boards have an awesome responsibility to the students of our community. Stating what you did, Shar supported the outlandish claims, and I'm not sure that's what you meant. Saying that, some community members have stated that providing an education about pornography has been done in our district, or likening the students' experience to the Holocaust, or describing our schools and the staff as the enemy is concerning to staff. We want people to speak out and be an advocate for their child. The outlandish comments is where there's concern. There's no supported evidence to go along with the claims. They're just kind of thrown out there. And it's an unnecessary stir of commotion within our community. Those stating these claims have lost a lot of credibility with many community members. And I encourage the board to continue to request civil and productive conversations at board meetings. While we can certainly appreciate everyone having an opportunity to have a voice, no matter what their stance. I do hope that the board understands that not addressing the decorum of the community in some ways demonstrates somehow the acceptance of those behaviors. In addition, I want to thank the schools and its staff members for giving what they can each day to the amazing students of our RSU. I am very proud to work alongside some of the amazing humans from across the departments. It is my hope that the staff continues to allow the support of students and their families to provide them the encouragement not only to show up each day, but to also do their job well and to stay working within our RSU. Everyone can reflect. Everyone can have goals to improve. Everyone in any profession can continue to build upon their talents. I hope that while we continue to better ourselves, that those supportive voices are the strongest that enter everyone's hearts.
Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anyone else? And if you come before us, if you just please state your name and where you live.
I'm Barbara Bagshaw from Wyndham, and I just appreciate everything that everybody said last week, and I'm a little confused. I heard Char's comments, so I just didn't hear the same thing from the comments last week, so I'm just a little confused, and maybe the board could put some clarification now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Robin Frost. I'm a Wyndham resident. And, you know, I have to say that I'm sorry that if you personally have been attacked as a teacher. Yeah, I just want to make sure that I'm sorry that you were attacked as a teacher. I don't think it's inappropriate to say that. And I certainly have a great deal of respect for the teachers and the staffs in the schools. I think they've done a remarkable job. What continues to be a problem, I think, is continuing to try to separate and isolate and almost punish or lecture people, which continues to bring division and not unity. And it just is surprising to me that several of the board members also did that and basically lectured and chastised and on personal opinion. And I really thought that this collectively was all based on factual policies and information, and there was no room for emotion. So I personally am not bullying or harassing teachers or staff members. I'm personally trying to just bring attention to the fact that the more we separate each other and we don't work together, this is going to get worse. And as we don't recognize the community, it's going to get worse. So I suggest that those comments, unless they have something productive to be said, are based on factual information and not personal emotion. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, everybody, I'm Steve Napolitano from Wyndham, and it's nice to see many beautiful faces today. I just wanted to comment quickly, and I've been coming to several board meetings in the past months, and I have not heard parents putting down teachers. I've actually heard a lot of gratitude, and even had some parents say that we should be getting bonuses to the teachers, and incredible appreciation. So it saddens me to hear that. So I didn't hear what was just said earlier as well. And I have to agree that Shar did not do that. I was going to ask if it's possible that we could use a Zoom type of technology at board meetings so the public can actually call in. I know Kate spoke during the meeting last week where she was able to participate that way. I know the town council does it as well. So I know the technology is there. So I'm hoping that you can at least consider that for future meetings. I'd like to respond to Marge. Marge said last week that you're answering questions, and mostly yes, but not directly. So you can answer the question, but if you're just answering it without answering it directly, it's not really doing what we're asking. So respectfully, I disagree with what you said. Okay. As far as Jenny was mentioning last week that parents were harassing her and bullying her, and I haven't seen any charges filed. I don't think there was a crime done. This is a public service job. And there is criticism that goes with it, unfortunately, especially when there are parents that are concerned with things that are going on that they don't believe is right. Like, as an example, CRT, which is what Jenny had posted and shared on her Facebook page. And I've actually had a great conversation with Mr. Howell, and he said that when you share a post, you own those words. So we have to be very careful, especially if you're in a public official position, to be careful with what you're doing on social media. And that's where we have those code of ethic guidelines. And it's very disappointing that there are no consequences or an apology or remove the posts. And that really hasn't happened yet. So yes, CRT is very concerning. Another word for CRT is equity. And there are a lot of upset parents about that. And tonight the meeting is low, and obviously with what we've been through and what you guys have been through, the attendance is down. This isn't going away, and we need to address this. We need to roll up our sleeves and get CRT type of curriculum out of the schools and get back to focusing on academics. That's what our children really need, and that's why we're all here. So again, thank you for your service. It's a very tough job, especially in this time period. So I appreciate all of you. In fact, I don't have any.
Thank you, Sue.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. Anyone else? Public comment? Seeing none, I will close it, and we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Everyone can hear me okay? So first of all, just a couple of quick updates. RSU 14 did go mask optional this week on Monday. That was this week, right? It's been a busy couple of weeks, but went mask optional on Monday. And I just want to give a huge shout out to all of our staff and the work that they did. I appreciate also for the board giving us those couple of days beforehand, because those days were opportunities for conversations in classrooms across the RSU, and to really address, as we transition from mask required to mask optional, what that means, how we can respect each other, how we can respect what happens. And I think our staff did an outstanding job of making sure that they had those critical conversations with their kids in their classrooms and across buildings and planning activities, just to make sure that as we transition, that we had that opportunity. And so far we're 3 days into mask optional. And again, I just want to really say thank you to our staff for the work that they did in order to support that. We will continue to track cases. We will go back to the Saturday 10 o'clock format with getting caseloads out, so that I know people are interested in tracking. We're only 3 days in, and case counts are actually really, really low at the moment. So we will continue to do that, and we'll continue to give that information to the community. Depending upon how things go, eventually at some point we'll retire that and just keep the dashboard current on the district site. But we are, again, we're mask optional, and I know many other districts in Cumberland County are having votes this week. And I think Cape actually might be the last one where they're looking at Wednesday of next week, or maybe Monday of next week. Actually, I take that back, Portland. Portland has not come to the table yet to have a discussion about that. Also wanted to say thank you and congratulations to all of our winter athletes. Fantastic to see the number of students who are out there and involved. Believe it or not, pitchers and catchers are in 2 weeks, and we'll be starting spring sports. And I know we're going to have these little nuisance snow things that are continue, but it was interesting talking to Rich earlier this week. The problem now is not getting people outside. It's just having people stay off the fields while they're wet to make sure that they're going to be playable when we get closer to the season. So if anybody's watching tonight, the public service announcement is stay off the fields until they have a chance to dry out, have a chance to do that. A couple administrators and I had a chance to meet with Frank Locker this afternoon. Frank is an educational consultant who has designed schools all across the world. And Frank has been working with RSU 14 for the last 3 years now on visioning for our new middle school project. And next Friday, we will have staff from Jordan Small, from Wyndham Middle, and then the 5th grade from Manchester School will all be coming together, continuing to work on that vision for what is it that we want the new middle school to look like, what is programming going to look like, And it's going to be a chance to get all the staff who will be all under the same roof moving forward, what that's going to look like. We met with the state construction office today. There's work that's going to be coming forward to the entire board. The state is paying for a facility study. And I know board members have heard me talk about this before. You know, one of our goals is eventually to have universal pre-K. What we don't want is to get to the end of this project, and so we move grade levels around and say, wait a minute here, we don't have enough space for universal pre-K. We're a couple of classrooms short. So that work is happening. Architects will be in district tomorrow. They've been hitting all the buildings, looking at opportunities to talk to administrators and teachers. There was a survey that went out to the teaching staff of Jordan Small, Wyndham Middle, and Manchester, talking about their spaces. So that work continues. Construction committee is meeting tomorrow night, and there'll be an update. Site selection wise, there's 3 sites that are still being looked at for possible locations of the new school. And the architects and our civil engineers will have a chance to kind of talk about that tomorrow night. Some work that's going to be moving forward on each of the sites so that we can finally get to a point here in a couple months where we can eliminate sites and really start focusing in on one. And remember that our target date for referendum is still June of 23. So that piece moving forward. Continuing to move with Maine Department of Education and the State Construction Office. They're pleased with where we're at and where we're moving. And I know I've had a few questions lately. We've been obviously talking about a bunch of different things at the board, but we haven't talked about construction. And I've just received a question this week. So what's going on with that project? And I think it would be helpful also to do a board presentation just so everyone has an understanding of where we are at the moment. Last thing, and I'll just address it now. Stephen asked a question about Zooming into meetings. We actually can't because of what was written into policy when the pandemic ended, is that there's a remote portion for board members on an RSU board, but there's not a remote portion for individuals to come in. So if individuals would like to provide public comment, they can always email the board, write to the board, provide it that way. Board members can participate virtually, but the public can't participate virtually. And I can't remember what the policy identifier is for that particular policy, but just be good to get that information out to everybody. So I know we've got an action-packed agenda tonight for budget, and so I don't want to hold us up anymore.
Thank you. Board roundtable. Anyone wish to speak? Jenny?
Mr. Napolitano, I did address you last week and let you know that what you said was false. I did not push any agenda. I am not pushing CRT. You can wipe the smirk off your face because I know last week while I was speaking, I'm speaking.
You're addressing me. You're being
I am
You're
speaking.
being rude. So please
I
stop.
am speaking. While I was speaking last week, there were a group who heckled me more than once. And that's really sad. I said that it was very clear in a Facebook post that I took down because of the nasty comments. All I said was, I think this is interesting and I think it's better to be prepared. I explained what I meant by that. And again, I was not pushing any agenda. During the board meeting last week, I spoke about stating that respect goes both ways. Adults are supposed to be examples from which our children learn. Anyone who saw those meetings learned that there are some adults at these meetings who are not being good examples by heckling some speakers. They have not been following the golden rule and treating others the way everyone should be treated. I also like to think of it as mutual respect. It means that people should have a dialogue and ask clarifying questions without jumping to conclusions. I would encourage every community member, whether they are here or at other locations or meetings, to emulate the golden rule and ask questions and not heckle those with whom they have a different opinion. Thank you.
Anyone else?
So I have to admit, you caught me off guard with your question, but I'm happy to at least explain or reiterate what I think I said. I have not watched the recording. But, you know, one of the things that I've been talking about since I came on the board last fall is that parents and community members need to take responsibility for the future of their communities. And in my opinion, parents and community members have for too long abdicated the responsibility of their education of the children to schools and school systems, both private and public. I advocate for people becoming more involved. And I like that people are becoming involved. It's unfortunate that the topics in which people are becoming involved are so hot button and so divisive, but it's a result of what's been happening the last few years. Now, with that being said, one of the things, and I know I said this last meeting, was that I want people, parents, community members that have concerns to have a direct dialogue with teachers, staff, administration, to get the information and get answers and build a level of trust. And I think that's where a lot of this is stemming from. I mean, personally, as a parent with a student at the high school, I hope to God that our worst fears are not happening in the school system. But when there's not open dialogue, when there's not open communication, when it seems like the shroud of COVID has been down for the last 2 years. I mean, just like next week, parent-teacher conferences are remote. I, for one, as a parent, would really like to look my daughter's teachers in the eyeballs. And it's not because I don't think they're doing a good job. I actually commended Ryan before he left tonight that I wanted to thank his staff, my daughter's teachers, and I thanked them via email more than once in the last week or two. And I told him, I said, it's because of a great leader like you that you have such good staff. Now, I want to believe that, and I hope that the worst fears are not happening. And frankly, do I think it's happening widespread? No, because we'd have more solid, concrete, quote unquote, evidence. But until people will be willing to have a dialogue and talk and be open and honest and invite concerned parents or community members to come into the classrooms and see what's actually happening on a day-to-day basis, all we're left to do is to sit home and see news reports from what's happening across the country and think, oh my God, please tell me that that's not happening in my daughter's school. And without being able to build a relationship, build a level of trust, frankly, what choice do we have? It's human nature to believe the worst in situations when we have unknown information. And, you know, it's unfortunate that we're here on one hand. On the other hand, I'm happy to see people getting involved, like I said. But the more that it seems like questions aren't getting answered, that involvement and open door policy, so to speak, is not happening, then the questions are going to continue to circulate, and the assumptions that things that shouldn't be happening are happening, at least on a limited basis, are going to continue. So until we can come, all of us, come to a situation where we can work together and build a level of trust, this is going to continue. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mike?
Well, I came to tell a happy story tonight, but I have to say that interaction we just had
a few minutes ago is really uncomfortable. And I think when we run for office, we accept the responsibility. And I'm not suggesting anybody's right or wrong, but I think we accept the responsibility to take feedback from the public. And it makes me, I wrote down code of honor, that we have something in our book that says we're gonna set some standards, but then if we don't live up to that, then what does it matter? So that was a really uncomfortable. I hope we as a board will spend some time talking about this at some point. So that was really uncomfortable. And second thing I want to say is people, I asked for it, but people have asked for the civil rights mentors to come, and we got word it's going to be April 13th that they're going to come present. And I hope we have a really good and positive conversation. I know I'm going to work towards that. And now I'm going to tell a happy story, actually. I say too many times that I'm a lobbyist or policy director up in Augusta. And I was up there today and working on a bill, and it was a bill trying to get passed, and the place was packed. They're not meeting a lot, so when they are meeting, it's pretty busy. And all of a sudden, as I was walking up down the hallway doing lobby stuff, a parent grabbed me and said, "Aren't you the guy on the Wyndham Raymond School Board?" I said, "Yeah." And it was a parent from RSU 14. I don't know, Chris, if you know about this. Did you hear about this? So, yep. Yeah, so I'm actually not sure who the parent was, but I know from Manchester, Ms. Fargo Ward. Yeah, she was there today. So that we had at least one administrator, a bunch of parents, and I don't know, 20 kids from Wyndham Raymond. And they were up there actually supporting the same bill I was supporting. So that was kind of cool. There was a press conference in the afternoon that I spoke at, and actually had a bunch of kids behind me from our district. So they brought signs. They were very proud. They all had cool t-shirts, and it just was a real, in so many ways, a very appropriate opportunity. So I just thought it'd be fun to share that tonight. So.
Thank you, Mike. Anybody else? Scott?
So I was planning on speaking, and then I kind of lost my sail a little bit. I was a little taken back by also what I just heard. What I was going to say is that I am very proud of this board, every individual on this board, for voting the way that we all did last week. We put our students first last week, and that's the way it always needs to be. And you know, we even have two board members who voted to remove the masks, but you recognize that you wanted those people to have a choice, and I commend the two of you for voting the way that you did, and I also respect the fact that other people still want to continue wearing their masks. And I want it to be known that harassment should not be tolerated in any circumstance. If people choose to wear their masks, then that is certainly their prerogative. That's what I was going to say. Now what I want to say is, Ms. Butler, you owe Mr. Napolitano an apology.
Marge?
Okay. By the way, I don't know if anybody shared pictures that you asked for. We were looking for pictures. I think I did see a post on there by somebody who comes to our meetings that they didn't have a picture to share, but because their child was not very happy with having their picture taken. But it was great. It was great to see the things. And the other thing I wanted to say is, and some of you probably know because everybody's on Facebook, God bless us all. But there's been a lot of comments on Facebook that from parents, from some staff, how well things have gone. Teachers are doing well. Students are extremely happy. There are classes with, so far, I think this is probably the younger grades. I'm not sure what's happening in the older grades, but in the younger grades, you have some students showing up with masks, some do not have masks. There doesn't seem to be any concern over it. There is nobody putting anybody on the spot. There is no harassing or no bullying. Everybody seems to be in a good place. So my hope is that all the parents and everybody out there, and I know the staff have explained to the students what this is all about, and they all seem to be taking it very well. And I'm extremely thrilled with that, because it just makes, I mean, we all want our kids to do well in school, and how do they do well is when they're comfortable and they feel comfortable and safe being there. So I want to thank, I know we only have one teacher here, but I want to thank all of the staff for what a wonderful transition they've made. This is great. You've had a tough couple of years. The students have had a tough couple of years. Parents have had to put up with students that are very uncomfortable, not doing well, either physically, emotionally with all of this. It's been tough for everybody, and I am so hoping we are on the other side of that. So I want to thank everybody.
Just a reminder, this is not, board roundtable is not interactive. Okay.
It has certainly been uncomfortable for me over the last few months, when I've had a couple of parents almost at every single board meeting since December request that I resign because they claim I have violated code of ethics. I am a Christian. I typically go to church most every week, except during ski season, but that's beside the point. And anyone that I have talked to cannot even believe that this is being said about me, that I am pushing some sort of agenda. I am on the school board for the students and the staff. And these personal attacks claiming I said or did something are highly inappropriate. So when I stand up and say something in my own defense, I get called out for it. I don't think that's okay. I have been trying to do my best not to go ahead and interact, but week after week, being pummeled with lies is not fair to me either. I have said over and over that we need to treat each other with respect. And when someone doesn't even ask me, but they jump to conclusions, that's not respect. I would be very glad to have a conversation, but I don't know if that would be fruitful or not. It makes me concerned that again and again, I have been the focus and butt of false claims. And I apologize to the board for taking up time for this. I am sorry. But when it gets to the point where, again, my character and my code of ethics have been questioned, I am going to stand up for myself because it's not fair. And again, I'm sorry, I am on this board to help the students and the staff and do the best we can. This has been a difficult time. And we shouldn't even have to be talking about this. So I apologize, but that's wrong.
Anybody else? Nope. Okay. We're going to move on to item 11, policies. May I have a motion, please? Anyone at all?
Sorry. I move to approve the first revised reading of policy. Is that L or an I? IJJ, instructional and library materials selection.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Before we go into public comment, I just wanted to give an overview of this policy. The policy committee met a couple of times, and we also met with the Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Christine Hessler, 3 of our librarians. The policy committee consists of Jessica Bridges, Kate Levier, Mike McClellan, and myself. I didn't forget anybody, did I? That's it. Oh, well, superintendent also attended. Yeah, but who's he? And Christine Frostburton, also assistant superintendent. And at our last meeting, well, let me back up. We met as a policy committee and kind of hashed it out. We had a Drummond and Woodsum sample policy, which we typically get just to see legally what should be in a policy. We compared it to our current policy, which is on the books and can be found under the board tab, under policies. All of our policies are there. And then we decided we needed to bring in the librarians, which we did, and they were wonderful and had a lot to say. And they are a very impressive group, so passionate about what they do, and we're very fortunate to have them on board. Following that, we decided that why don't we have a direct conversation with Ann Chapman, who works for Drummond and Woodsum. And so she zoomed in, and the rest of us, I think it was Mike, you and myself and Christine, and the librarians who met with Ann, yes, with Ann Chapman. And she kind of walked us through her logic of the recommended changes for our policy. And so we're taking their advice. We're taking the legal advice. I spent a bit of time trying to mesh the new versus the old. Some of it is similar, but some of it is not. And I just want to be clear that, and I want to get this right. This policy is for materials in the libraries and educational materials. I've got that right, correct? Overall, for the educational programming for our students. What it is not is it's not the policy IMBB, which is exemption from required instruction, which is a totally separate policy. This is strictly a policy regarding the materials that we use for the education of our students. And so I don't know how many questions you all have about the changes. I can walk through. Some of it is formatting. I know you all got our original policy, and you've gotten our proposed draft policy. I want to go to one part, responsibility for selection of materials. The first, I'm going to kind of briefly walk through it because this is a very timely and important policy that's on everybody's minds. And so for the first paragraph, the first sentence is changed to educational materials. And as we all know, that covers a wide range of materials. It's not just textbooks anymore. I'm kind of an old dog when I even say textbooks. Excuse me. When we get to responsibility for selection of materials, there's a change here. It's broken out that the superintendent, I'm going to read this, superintendent in consultation with administrators and professional staff is responsible for selecting instructional materials and library media materials to implement the learning results and support the curriculum. This includes textbooks, books, printed materials, software, online resource materials, multimedia materials, and information technology. Certified library media specialists are responsible for overseeing the library media program under the supervision of the superintendent. Superintendent is also responsible for developing any administrative procedures necessary to guide the review and selection of educational materials, and may delegate specific responsibilities to staff as deemed appropriate. All administrative procedures must be consistent with this policy. The superintendent is expected to keep the board generally informed about educational materials purchased for the school unit. So I guess the buck stops with you. Okay. Just a few minor changes under criteria for selection. It really, a lot of it is just wordsmithing. Let me go. The one new addition that wasn't in our old one was be accessible by individuals with disabilities. Otherwise, unless you would like me to read through the changes, are you good with? Do you want me to? Okay, just asking. And then the selection procedure was tweaked a bit. Donated materials was highlighted. Inspection of materials by parents and opt-out requests. was designated. And then there's a section that's probably of most interest called Challenge Materials Procedure. And it really outlines the steps if anyone wishes to challenge any material that we use for curriculum or in our libraries. It's pretty prescriptive. And it's very helpful for those of you who have interest in that. And that's basically it. So it's a policy that we've had. The last we approved, I think, was 2013. It's always good to review policies. Times have changed, materials have changed. And having Drummond and Woodson look at this gives us some comfort level that we're moving in the right direction. Did you have something, Mark?
Yeah, sure.
At the last meeting where you and I attended, I think, it was pointed out in the challenge materials procedure that, so there's a whole process to it, and then a decision, I guess, is made out of material. There's also a, what's it called, a appeal to that. So a decision can be made and, be done, and then there can be an appeal process, which I think was in the policy, but the people with us were basically suggesting that didn't seem to be known. And so the public could obviously challenge and appeal, but also the superintendent could appeal. And it seemed like important information at the time.
I also want to point out that attached to this policy and listed separately on our website is the form. It's called IJJE, the form that the public would use to challenge any educational material. Tweak just a bit, but we are not voting on exhibits. We only vote on the policy. And I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent for further discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks. And something that I just wanted to go ahead and just reinforce for everybody is that policy IJJ is actually part of a whole suite of instructional policies. So there's IJJ, which is instructional library material selection. There's IMBB, which is exemption from required instruction, and then IMB, teaching about controversial sensitive issues, which was a policy that a member of the public asked for the board to take a look at and to review. I think what's important to note on this, and just important for board members as you read through this, is that for policy IJJ, that would be a policy that would be put into place that if a member of the public believes that something that we have for curriculum material or a book that we have in our library or something else, that's not appropriate for any student in the RSU to access. And so that follows policy IJJ, and then IJJE, and IJJ and IJJE, and I can't believe how quickly these roll off the tongue. They've been policies in RSU 14 for a long, long time. This is nothing new, and they outline the procedures. But if an individual, if it's a piece of the required curriculum and it's not something that they want their student to actually have access to, or don't want their student to read, there's a procedure that's outlined in IMBB, which is exemption from required instruction, and there's a process and a policy there. So when you as you think about this whole suite, there's one portion of it, which is that there's a piece of material in the library, or there's a piece of instructional material that I don't think any kid should access. That would be IJJ. If it's something that you don't want your individual student to access, then it would be the IMB. IMBB route. So there's a couple different routes here. I think what's important for everyone also to know, and I think it's important for the public to know, in both of these, the process that if somebody challenges a material that's within a library, that material stays until a final decision is made. It's important that we follow that process. Also, just want to add to this, there's another companion policy, which is surveys. And that's another one that the policy group has taken a look at to make some adjustments, because definitely we've heard things about comments about surveys this year, but for individuals to know that that also is being looked at and how to appropriately move forward within the RSU. So board members, you're going to be hearing a lot of ayes here for the next little bit. And I think they reflect that we need to have a process. and also reflect that not everybody's going to agree on a material. And there may be some parents who want their child to have access to a material, and there may be parents who don't want to have their child to have access. And we want to honor that. The law wants us to honor that, but making that decision, what's appropriate for my child versus what I think is appropriate for a larger group. So I know it's a lot of eyes, but each one kind of serves their own little function. Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe a great teaching moment. So the other day in my work, I got an email from someone I kind of knew about a different school district. And they had an issue in the school district. And my wife's an educator, and so, you know, I had a sense of it all, I guess. So the learning and what I tried to teach to this person was, you know, what you would teach to your kid. You would say, go to the source, you know, start at the beginning. So if you have an issue, and I think this is probably really relevant given all the back and forth we've had the time I've been here with the audience, is, you know, if you have an issue, you go to the teacher first. If that's where it starts, you go to the teacher. And if that isn't satisfactory, then there's a principal, maybe an assistant, but there's an administrator. There's obviously the superintendent, there's a school board. So there definitely, you know, you've heard a few times we talked tonight about the process in here. And a good thing to know, like all our policies are on the website. I know you guys know this, but all our policies are on the website. And as I, in my job, taking questions from other school systems, and I've looked, I think I must be standard. Every school system I've looked at seems to have their policies on their website. Real easy to find, and we certainly do. So another place to go to the policies. And again, I know you guys know this, but go to the policies and find out the protocols and walk through that. And hopefully that'll help things get resolved. So I think just a good opportunity for a learning moment. Doesn't always work, but should.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead.
This is, this is a question on. I just have a question on this piece of paper that was in our packet. Is this online? I mean, can anybody access this, or is this just introduction to policies being reviewed by policy committee? Only because there's a thing here, click here. So I didn't.
So the piece of paper that's in the board is Christine is doing a wonderful thing this week where she's helping a family who's been deployed in California. And so in her generosity and kindness to me before she left, she gave me a cheat sheet to make sure that all my policies were straight, because Christine has worked extremely hard on the policy pieces, and also as a former high school and middle school English teacher, and her familiarity not only with the canon of books, but then how books are selected. She just want to make sure that we got it right. So that was her parting gift.
Okay, so this isn't real.
But we actually can make this available because it is a great cheat sheet.
I thought it was great because it's really condensed, you know, it says this for this, and then you, okay, sorry.
Okay. Any public comment? Again, comment on this motion for first reading of IJJ. And again, we limit it to 3 minutes, and we would welcome any comment.
Question. I know you just stated that there is ability to challenge an item. And I'm not saying in our district this is the case, but they are having a problem in another district where there's some items being challenged that are could be considered really inappropriate. They still are following the same process, which it sounds like what you're proposing, that the material, if it is not fit for children, remains until such time that this process is followed, which could take months. So then you have possible inappropriate material in the library until this whole process is dealt with. That actually could be material that is something a child should never see. So that's concerning in that if there's not some type of something written in stating that if this material is considered illegal or against what children should be seeing, is there something that states that it can be at least put on hold and removed until the process is followed? That would be my question.
Thank you. Anyone else? No further public comment or discussion.
Chris, I actually had the same exact question as Dr. Frost. So if there is a piece of material that is, let's just say, for example, I objected to, what is that process and how quickly is that process reviewed from beginning to end?
So I want to first of all just start with is that the materials and books that are purchased and recommended by professional staff who are often going through a curriculum committee or other thing. If there's a dangerous material that, let's say that somebody from the community wants to donate to a library, let's say it's a collection of magazines that should not be appropriate in any sort of high school library, middle school library, those particular items donated still need to follow the same quality controls that are used for any other piece of curriculum or anything else that's adopted through that process. And so you would want to start, first of all, that it's a quality material to begin with that's gone through a vetting process, which is the first part of the policy. I think the other part which the committee would want to take a look at is that there may be materials that you don't want students to read that I want my student to read. And I think the committee, depending upon the type of material, things could be more expeditious if needed. I'm trying to think of a situation where we've come across this. I've been in the district in a curriculum role since 2004. I've been through IJJ twice. And so I would want to look at and have an example of material.
So what's the answer?
It depends on the item, and I would want to know what the item is. I mean, if we're talking something that should be filtered on a computer, that happens very, very quickly. And if it's something that is a book, let's take, for example, the Bible. Bible's been a challenge book, and people have wanted to go after that for years and whether or not that should be in a library. That process, we would follow the exact same process that would go along. But I would view that personally as an inappropriate website that kids shouldn't have access to that has something illegal, immoral in it. Which again would have to follow a process. So something that might be dangerous, we'd want to go a little bit more expeditiously. I wish I could say, Scott, it's going to be 2 days, it's going to be 3 days. I can't give you that answer, but a committee is going to have to form and look and go at it. If something is so dangerous, so malicious, we would want to move that a little bit quicker. And I guess I would ask you for an example of what that might be.
I guess the reason why I'm asking is obviously the survey that went out earlier this year, it obviously got a lot of traction. And so I guess based on those parameters that survey went out, who is determining proper content of the books? You know what I mean? There was a paragraph in here under this file, criteria for selection. Section D, it was in the old policy as well, so it's not new. Take into consideration the varied interests, abilities, and maturity levels of students served. Who determines the maturity levels? And I'm honestly asking. So say I have a serious concern about a book, and I let several of my friends know that my child is reading this book. And then they also let you know that they have concerns about this particular book. And we are able to go through and cite specific pages and examples. How quickly will that process be expedited to make sure that there are other parents that maybe not so intuitive with their child's education is their child is also not reading this book. I'm not trying to tell other people how they should and should not parent. I'm just trying to look out for my child and my child's best interest. But I also think that, you know.
And I think it's also dependent upon, is it a single book or is it a book that's used as part of an entire class instruction? And is there choice given within a class instruction so that parents have choice as far as what their student is actually reading? So I guess something that would be whole class instruction, whole grade level instruction, course instruction. Typically those are pretty broadly done. Something for an individual class where a staff member may have multiple choice so that parents can make that choice, or where there may be a single item within the library may go through a little bit of a different process. But our librarians go through quite a process when they go through book selection and determining what's going to be within the holdings of Wyndham High School, Wyndham Middle School, Jordan Small, Manchester, Raymond Elementary, and Wyndham Primary.
I'm sorry, do you mind if I play this out in my head a little bit? Okay, sorry, still show that, Pete. All right, so I think what I'm hearing is that we as parents do have an alternate path. So say there is a series of books within a set curriculum that I, as a parent, do not agree with. I can come to the building principal and say that I object to this particular curriculum, and that is an alternate pathway to get my student to go in a different direction. And at that point, the teacher will have to will have to tailor to my requests and provide an alternate curriculum. Okay, thank you.
Finally. I'm kidding.
All right, I don't want to get into, what if scenarios tonight, but you did mention something, Chris, when you were talking that I just need a little clarification on. In the instance of not a curriculum, but individual book in the library, if somebody thinks that that is inappropriate, you mentioned that if it was determined that it wasn't appropriate for any student, it could be removed, or something along those lines of a determination would be made if it was appropriate for any student. And I'm just wondering how that plays out with grade levels, because if you have a book in the middle school library that somebody says is not appropriate, it might be appropriate for somebody in the 12th grade, so it's appropriate for some student. But is there an age appropriate level to this policy?
That's actually on IJJE, which is the form that accompanies. It's one of the things that somebody can check is to say, I think this is appropriate for this particular grade level. And the committee would have a chance to take a look at that.
Anyone else? Sure.
I have two questions. The first one is, and I'm going to ask this question from the best possible position, and please don't take it as accusatory by anyone. I'm just, and I've read the policy and I understand it. And under what circumstances could a staff member introduce things into their teaching plan that didn't necessarily follow this process? That's question one.
Do you have a specific example?
I don't. It's purely a question
Yeah.
out of being naive
In
about
my
how it
experience
happens.
with book selection is that typically teachers are getting together at a grade level, or teachers are working with the librarian, or they are working with their peers to develop classroom libraries. So there tends to be a peer process or a review process or a review of resources that might be out there that make suggestion for book levels and appropriateness at different grade levels.
Okay.
Going to those resources.
All right, thank you. And kind of conversely to kind of this policy kind of, or a big piece of it, probably what a lot of people are taking focus on is how do we make things go away? I have actually the converse question. How, you know, in the news, I often hear about books that I grew up in the school system reading that in some places, and I don't know if that's the case in RSU 14, but in some places, they're no longer allowed to have these books in schools, such as To Kill a Mockingbird, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Animal Farm, books like that, that I cherished when I was in school. And so if I'm not saying it's happening, I don't know, but if there was a book that, or a line of instruction that I cherished as a child, what would be the process for me to bring it to the school system and say, hey, why aren't we doing this? Why was it, why isn't this being done anymore? And can we bring it back? Is there a process for that?
I would start with a conversation with our librarians, media specialists, because they work, and the policy committee had a chance to meet with them. They work very, very hard to curate a collection that meets the needs of so many different types of kids and learners within our district. And so I think I would go to them. I'd say they're the experts. And in fact, one of our meetings, they gave us a list, I think, of the top 100 banned books and kind of went down through and went through things. And so, and even Char, we just said, kind of illustrates what IJJ is all about, which is that you as a parent are asking for your student to read some things. And I think what IJJ and IMBB look at is that you as a parent get to have that choice as far as what it is your student's going to read. It shouldn't be up to me to decide what you are going to read or what your student's going to read, that you and a kid picking something out the library get to have that choice in working with your student. And so really it's about that idea of choice of, I get to have that conversation with my student as a parent. What are you reading? You know what, I don't think you should be reading. I don't think it's appropriate. Let's work with your teacher to find something different. We get to have that conversation. We want to partner with that. However, it shouldn't be, what are you reading? Well, what's so-and-so reading? I don't think they should be reading it. But if people feel so strongly and they do think that there's something there's a process, and we want to just make sure that we follow that process through IJJ.
Okay, just a quick follow-up. So I understand that I can work with my child to read whatever I think is appropriate for her to read. I get that on her own time. But as a parent, or a group of parents, if they decided that something should be taught to a wide variety of students in the school system, is there a process for parents or community members to bring something forth and say, we should be teaching this, and why aren't we?
I would suggest they contact the librarians, contact our director of curriculum, and have a chance, because even through this policy as a description, does it meet the learning results? Does it meet the needs of diverse learners? What are all those things? We will gladly take donations to our library, because we don't fund the libraries to the level that we used to be able to do. And I know our librarians have also worked for, again, to curate and to provide the best possible, most up-to-date materials that they can for kids. But we're always willing to enter those conversations, and our librarians are outstanding professionals who have outstanding access to reviews, to peer-reviewed items, and to be able to then say, yeah, that's something we can do, or add to our library, or maybe it's something we can add to the curriculum. But we want to look at it versus main learning results and through other required curriculum pieces, but love to have that conversation, and we will always take donations.
Just to be clear, there is in the policy a statement about donated materials and how that works. Any other questions? Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that some of the books that were mentioned, like Animal Farm and To Kill a Mockingbird, I've read in both the high school and middle school. Atmosphere, and in every scenario, the teacher discussed with the class before about the mature themes that were going to be brought up in the book, and alternates were provided without even asking about that. So I think from what I've seen, there's been a lot of good communication about the books and the themes that you're going to be reading before you have to read the books.
Thanks, Al. That's good feedback. Jenny?
I have to say, thinking about mathematics and curriculum, that always made our life a whole lot easier. Nothing controversial about that at all. But I know that all of the staff that I've worked with over the years, they work so hard at trying to find what they consider best to fit the learning results and research and the hours and hours and hours that they provide to trying to do their best for the students, for all the students, and providing alternatives and talking about that first. And, they're really good. I think we've got a really good crew. We're very fortunate to have such professionals.
Anyone else? Okay, we've had public comment and more discussion. Are we ready for a vote for the first reading? All those in favor? Thank you. It's unanimous. We're going to move on to item number 12, 18 cost centers. And first up is our illustrious Director of Facilities and Operations, Bill Hanson. Welcome, Bill.
There we go. Good evening. I'm Bill Hanson, RSU 14 Facilities Director. I can't believe this is the 13th year I've come to talk to you. I don't know how that happened. It was just year one yesterday. So I'd like to start off first with a big thank you. These past 2 years have been challenging, very challenging. And the professional educational staff, the educational support staff, and all the support staff, they have all worked together to just do an amazing thing to get us through this. And I couldn't be more proud to be with such a great group of people. We pulled together and made it happen. So just to say a big thank you to the entire group, because we couldn't have done it alone. And the patience of everyone working together to get to the common goal has just been, it's been neat to see. So I just want to start with that. I don't have a real exciting budget to talk about this year. So one of the things I always like to lead with the people who are new to the board is just to make you understand what we're talking about here. So our facilities right now are in worth in excess of probably $240 million. And we're looking at probably somewhere between $80 and $100 million in the middle school to go with it. So we'll be approaching $3.5 to $400 million of asset when we're done. So why is this important? So this is important because if you look at maintaining these assets, the concerns that we have right now is the buildings are getting older. And our new high school was brand new in 2004. So Al, were you in school in 2004? Where were you? Okay, all right. Enjoy being young. You know, let be in a hurry. So the point is that our newest building is getting to a point where it's getting up in age. Okay, and why is that important? You know, if you consider, let's just make the math simple, $200 million worth of assets. If we assume that they would all last 50 years, which I'm telling you, the guideline life on a boiler is between 25 and 30, air handle is about 20. But if I give you 50, which is twice of that, that would mean I'd need $4 million a year of replacements. In the capital budget this year, we're just under $1 million, which I'm excited about because when I started here, I think we were around 250,000. So over the years, we've gone in a great direction. I appreciate your support. You know, we had a tough year too. We lost a boiler at Manchester. And thanks to your support, we got that replaced. Now, The two boys, we knew they were old, they're 47 years old. We knew we were on borrowed time with them, but because of their quality of construction, we chose to run to failure. And, you know, if you think about it, a replacement 30 years, the boys, they would be 17 years old now. So they would have been halfway through their life. So I think it was a good choice, made from excitement around Thanksgiving and Christmas that I would like to have avoided, but that's how it is. So, you know, the message to look at the budget for on the facility side is that, you know, in the years to come, we're going to start seeing some of these replacements having occur. You know, there's one of the budgets you'll see items in there, there's a $100,000 lease for Manchester for HVAC replacement. That's going to be a 10 to 12 year, maybe 14 year lease, talking about $1.4 million for that project to do that. Those units on the roof were brand new in 2000, so they're 22 years old. They don't provide the ventilation that it's time to replace them. The economy of scales we're talking about get to be pretty big in my budget, okay? And, you know, we'll do the best we can. One of the things I'm really excited about is over the years, we've improved our preventive maintenance plans and the work we're doing. So I think we'll be able to continue to extend things beyond that useful life as long as possible. But it's going to be a challenge in the next 10 to 15 years as things continue to get older. They'll have to start replacing roofs that are getting 25 or 30 years old. It's just part of the process of maintaining these buildings. But again, I also want to say thank you to the board because from the time I've been here, you've always supported the work to keep things in great shape. And I really feel that's really important for education. When the kids come into school, it should be comfortable. It should be warm. It should be dry. I was talking to a facilities director in the school system that kids came to school and they had buckets all down the hallway collecting the rain coming through the roof. That's not RSU 14, and I'm so thankful for that. So with that, that's really kind of my discussion for you folks is where do you want to talk about specifics in the budget? I'm happy to do that. My budget is a little bit lower than it was the year before, which is great. The other concern I do have, just so we're aware of it, is utilities. Okay. The great news is our electricity is locked into 2023. Thank you, Chris. We went out on a limb. I think we did a 4 or 5 year, 6 year lease on electricity. At a time, it was terrifying. It looks really good right now. And we do work with an energy constellation company. They've been a talk to you before, Competitive Energy Services, and we talked back and forth. I heard about Charlie this week about fuel oil because I'm a little concerned about that because I did increase fuel oil in the budget. Okay. Right now, the price of fuel is quite high. If you look at the prices coming by, not a reason to panic at this point in time. I'm not going to get too excited. The upside is, you know, we're funded at about $2.70, $2.80, maybe even $3 a gallon in the current budget. Okay, current prices are over $5. Okay, I don't think that's going to stay. In the event that they were to stay at $5, the good news is that the territory is small, we can run propane or number 2 fuel oil, which gives us a nice ability to play the market and buy the lower fuel. It's kind of the direction I'm trying to get to in all of our schools. So we can choose how we're going to heat things. But that's the good news. So there is a concern there with the utility prices going up. I think we're still in a pretty good shape. And the nice thing is we're starting to see some of our savings from the solar panel farms coming in. Unfortunately, I've offset that with higher run times and the air equipment to keep air moving in the building. So I'm not going to say that we're seeing savings yet, but we have a nice savings coming towards us. My last concern is around project work. The supply chain is crazy right now. So, things that I used to get done easily in the summertime are more challenging. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Speak.
Yeah, Bill, talking about the energy, it's nice that we do have the electricity locked in. What's been your experience with locking in prices on heating oil?
Well, the last contract we did was with Fielding for 2 years, and I'm happy to tell you we're paying $2.09 a gallon right now. I wish I could buy more and sell it on the open market. It's a profit. So, and those of you with propane, we're paying $1.09 a gallon for propane. Okay. Again, we work very closely with Competitive Energy Services. We look at the markets, they forecast things, we watch the trends. So it's a real process, and they've been invaluable. We've been working with them getting probably close to 10 years. And it's a really nice way for us to keep these things in check. Okay. And I'm not gonna say it isn't like a little bit like poker. You have to decide when you're gonna hold them, when you're gonna fold them, and that's really how we have to deal with this. But I think right now I'm concerned about fuel oil and heating this next year. I was really happy this year, we had a 2-year contract, and then what happens in the process is we get the information from Competitive Energy Services, and then Chris and I will look at that and we'll make our best guess. I do watch the futures market. I try to look at all those things, take that into account. Because quite frankly, the thing that irritates me about utilities is there isn't a single utility that we spend money on that helps educate the child better, other than create the environment. So we could spend less money for that and buy it more efficiently for a better price. The other nice thing I'll tell you is that I have seen primary school put the energy recovery systems in. Year over year, we're seeing a pretty good savings on natural gas down there just for the 3 systems we put in, because of the fact that we're recovering the energy from the exhaust air as opposed to just sending it out the louver. So that's been a nice thing. It's going to be something we'll continue to be working on. The Manchester School has full energy recovery as part of that design that we're working on.
Bill, what I wanted to say was that I want to commend you for seeing very early on in this pandemic that this was more of a viral thing, and recognizing that and deciding to upgrade the ventilation units in several of our schools. I think that you had just touched on the fact that we're not really seeing a significant savings on our electricity with the addition of the solar farm acquisition because of the energy output with those. Do you see that changing anytime soon?
I think that the report they gave us this year, this was $43,000 in savings. Is that what the forecast was? Is around that? You know, so it's coming. Solar farms are coming online. We're going to get more money, but my electricity utilities are up because of my longer run times. I'm really running the systems longer. I used to let the buildings coast towards the evening, and now we're running them right the whole time we're occupied. And I'm bringing in a lot more fresh air, which means that's more boiler run time. That's really the way you need to do it, in my opinion, is to keep the buildings as safe as possible and healthy as possible.
I'll just also add with the solar piece is that right now, most of our savings in that consortium have been through 5 separate hydroelectric plants that we've been receiving that. So many of the solars now are starting to come online. There was a little bit of slowness last year when there was some connectivity questions. In addition, the pandemic hit some smaller startup solars, and their rights to some projects are now being resold to some other ones. I signed some paperwork today for one that's been sold and being transferred. So I think they're coming online a little bit slower, but we are seeing some savings. And I think Bill's right. We're going to be able to see that over the next couple of years as they really start to come online.
Thank you. Just a quick one, staffing. We've heard about bus drivers, we've heard about special ed department. How's your staffing? Do we have people? Is this an issue?
So this year for staff and the way we handled it, somehow we're fully staffed until right now. I just had a head custodian retire. So I'm actively hiring for that, but we're fully staffed. And we've also brought in additional Bonnie temp folks to augment it, because what we found is we need more cleaning during the day in a lot of our buildings. So that's works out pretty well. So right for the moment, we're fully staffed, and you know, we've talked about wanting to add some more staff, because what's really changed is our day porters, day custodian duties have really increased, with kids eating breakfast in the classrooms and then going in our recess, you know, resanitizing deck surfaces and cleaning high-touch surfaces in between. That's what we've done, is basically moved an evening custodian position to the day, so we have more people there. So if it continues that way, we'll probably be talking next year about adding some staff to increase that day presence, which has been very positive. I know Dr. Rhodes says it's been a big improvement for the primary school to have that additional help. So that's one area.
I know that, it looks like there aren't too many huge giant projects coming up that are budgeted for this next year, but have you, I'm assuming, but I'm going to ask the question because you know what happens when you assume. Do you think you've adequately budgeted for cost increases for materials and services with the inflation and increase in gas and shortages and all of that fun stuff?
That's a great question. And until this most recent change in utilities and where's this gonna go? I wish I had a crystal ball and I know 3 months from now where we're gonna be. I'm concerned about the fuel oil and that particularly impacts the 2 Raymond schools. One of the challenges we have down in Wyndham is that the main natural gas is only supplier. So I'm kind of held a little bit hostage as to what they charge me for a price. Lately, it's been good, but it all has to do with, basically, if you look at the whole futures market, how much storage they have. And if you watch that, you see that really impacts the price. And, these warmer, milder winters have helped us because the withdrawal from the storage has been less, so that the storage has been able to maintain a high level. So, we are looking at, the increase of the budget is in the range of almost 5%. And so I feel that's a, responsible level to be at. In 6 months, we have to maybe make some changes if we see things continue up. Yeah, we can. The budget would allow me to do that. There are some big projects going on, like in the Manchester in primary school HVAC upgrade projects are big ESSER funded projects, so they're not necessarily in the budget. And then also the COPS grant work is in here, as well as the finishing the revolving renovation work. So actually, these next 6 months are going to be a little bit insane. And we get it all done before school starts. But it's really hard to tell. And the other thing is the unknown failures that can occur. We are planning on replacing the other boiler at Manchester this summer. That's in the budget. So we'll have 2 new boilers there. We have 1 new one now and one of the original older boilers. We have money in the primary school project. We have the HVAC goes well to replace the older boilers down there as well. It's kind of contingent upon what that project cost is. So I feel that we can be successful with the funding level we have. But that could change in a minute based on a few issues. The good news is I think we have good PM programs so that we're on top of most of our issues. So I'm not anticipating a big issue. The roofing is probably the biggest challenge, and the middle school roof at the Wyndham on nursing. I'm not going to lie, it probably, if we're going to stay there another 20 years, I'd say we'd be replacing it. But I think I can get 5 years out of it with some good work. This roof here has been replaced, so this building's actually in great shape. And RES roof has been replaced recently too. The high school roof is 22 years old, so that's 25 to 30. You start to get to a place that you need to do something. And primary school is probably the oldest roof that we have right now as far as metal roof. It's good. And Manchester was brand new in 2000, so it's 22 years old. So.
My second question, you actually just touched on it. It's actually from a community member who emailed me. She saw the ad in the paper looking for bids for work at Manchester and Wyndham Primary for HVAC work. And she was asking questions about, I thought this was already completed prior, earlier in COVID. And I responded that I believe it was an addition to work that's already been done. And then I said, call Bill. But since you just brought it up, if you could touch on that a little bit to explain for folks that may have seen the ad and thought, well, I thought that was already done, all the ventilation work.
So the work that we did for ventilation upgrade is focused on a few things. One, we upgraded filters in all the units we could from MERV 8 to MERV 13. So what does that do? It provides better filtration for the space. The products that we recently advertised for are replacing air handlers. The air handlers, HV 1 and 2 at primary school were brand new in 1988, 89. They don't have the static pressure capable of providing the MERV 13 filtration, and they can't provide the outside air that we need. So that's why those 2 are being replaced, and they're beyond the 25-year useful life, and then some. At Manchester, as part of ESSER, ESSER funding is going to be pivotal in both these projects. We're replacing all the rooftops because, again, they're not capable of. We did increase the filtration to MERV 13 as part of the work for COVID. However, they're not capable of providing the fresh air that we need, or their marginal MERV 13 filtration. The new units have MERV 14 filtration with energy recovery, so we can get the fresh air we need in. So they're larger projects that have planned improvements. If we look at the HVAC in our sites, the high school rooftop units are all 2-stage filtration with MERV 13 filters in them. So they're really solid. The worst thing which they had is they don't have injury recovery. So over time, I'm going to work on continuing to add injury recovery to our schools so I can bring in more fresh air. That's one of the key learnings that I've had through this whole COVID is that even though the design work shows that there's enough CFM and air coming into the spaces, there can be issues with mixing as well as the appropriate percentage of outside air, particularly in design days when we're talking about it's 5 or 10 below zero. It's really hard to bring all that air in and mix it without recovering energy from all the air that you're exhausting out. And the big learning at primary school, the 3 months we did upgrade is being as part of the ESSER funding the year before, is that the temperature uniformity in the building has become tremendously wonderful. And I kid about this, and I mean this in all the best respect to all my educational staff, but I've learned in my 13 years that teachers freeze around 68 to 69 degrees and they boil about 73. That's their physical properties. And if I can keep them in that range and they can just focus on teaching kids, isn't that wonderful? Right? That's what our goal was to do, is to make it, I have a mission statement I can share with you, but our goal was to make it such that the educational staff can focus on the educational deliverables and forget they have a building. So if it's noisy, if it's creaky, if it's drafty, if it's too cold, it's too hot, we failed. And I'm not going to say that we always succeed, but that's our goal to get there. So these are part of larger projects. I'm working on a pretty extensive basic design for the new school build we're putting in that will have these things in them as well. And the more I read about ASHRAE and recently in the air quality conference I went to, it is all about filtration of fine particles. It's all about keeping our CO2 levels low, bringing in more fresh air, and energy recovery is a great way to do that because I'm telling you right now, we save money by doing that. So I hope I answered the question.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Bill, just for the benefit of the new folks, and also I guess as a refresher for me, you're here tonight going over your operating budget. Will you be coming back later on in the budget process to talk about your capital plan?
So generally what ends up happening so this is a great question. There's actually 4 funding models that I work with. So there's the operating budget, which is basically R&M and the cost of the labor and salaries of all the people who work in the department. As part of that, we have what's called MIP funding, which is maintenance improvement project. It's cash funding from the operating budget. So that's the second mechanism. The third mechanism is lease payments from the operating budget. So those are things basically that we can finance. So it has to have a serial number. One thing to learn the hard way is that we've got to do a ball field at RES. I cannot finance that because there is no serial number up there. So I have to have cash for that. But if there's a serial number, I can finance it. So that's the third mechanism. And the fourth mechanism is usually we come to the finance committee, we talk about year-end fund balance transfer. And that's called a capital improvement project. And those things are nice in that that funding can bridge fiscal years. So those are the 3 things that I do. I'm happy to, we can talk about what's in the MIP and CFP budget if you'd like me to review that with you. That's in the current budget right now. I have not talked with Chris about the CIP funding for this next year. It's usually after we get through the budget, have a better idea where we stand fiscally for the year that we start talking about that. Usually that's a discussion in April that comes to the finance committee after we look at that.
I think the other thing with capital that we're trying to wade through is that we also have revolving renovation projects that need to be wrapped up this year, or we're going to lose the funding. So there's a lot of things that are already funded that are working on the plate, that are already on the plate that we're trying to move forward. And so looking at that, in addition, and I know the board's heard me say this before, but for the public as well, is we're going to also have to put aside 1.1 to 1.2 million into a capital fund for pre-construction costs that will be reimbursed back to us once the project is financed and is run through, but we're going to need to put the money up front. So looking at taking that out of fund balance, that will be another capital account to pay for some of those upfront architectural fees and costs and environmental fees that the state will go ahead and reimburse us later on. We'll get the money back, but we have to put that money up front.
So Pete, I can quickly go through the MIP and see if you would like me to. I'm happy to do that.
No, Char just asked the question earlier about, these projects that we have coming up, and allocated enough for all the increases. So I think it's just important for everybody to understand that we'll be talking about those things at a later point as well. Sure. And so, any questions that they may have or that I may have, there'll be another opportunity to get that information as well.
And I know we have a facilities committee meeting next week, and I'm happy to come to finance too. We'd like to go over what's going on and what we're thinking about. I was happy to do that. And again, I just want to thank you all for the great support because, you know, I talked to different directors throughout the state, and your priority to keeping our facilities in great shape really is huge because I don't see every board having that same priority. Often they're trying to use duct tape and baling wire, and I like to maintain that red green is not on the property of RSU 14. These stay side by sides. So.
Chris, maybe this is a better question for you. But Bill, I was looking over your budget last night and then again today. And there really isn't a whole lot there, is there? But as I was kind of skimming through just now, I must have just breezed right over it. What does BenQ units have anything to do with facilities? Does it tell you, can you power down the building with a BenQ unit?
All right, so
It's an interactive TV for those that don't know.
So Bob's going to be talking after. Bob and Bill are pretty much joined at the hip because technology can't occur without facilities, and facilities cannot occur without technology. Right? My lights are programmed on my phone through our web system. The HVAC is all through this webinar. So we're tied together. So the BenQ work, what we've been doing is replacing projectors with the BenQ panels. I think some of you have seen them. And I think it's an exciting technology for many reasons. One, the bulbs don't burn out on them. And generally the projectors, they burn out the worst time and it's hard to change them out. They don't require the PMs. We have to give the projectors need to be touched once or twice a year to clean dust out of them and take care of them. So we've been transitioning the district-wide technology to BenQ in all the classrooms. And our goal would be to move in that direction such that in maybe 3 years, that's our technology of choice for deliverables. And I know that there's a few teachers in the primary school, which they all have today. And it's a learning process because it's different, but I think it's pretty exciting. So our plan is to continue to work on the install of those. We've been buying a lot of the BenQs through ESSER funding. I guess some real advantages in that kids can actually join the classroom through the BenQ, which is kind of neat. So I think it's pretty exciting stuff. So our work is prepping the room, getting all the mounts in, getting the saw, getting the electrical in, getting the network to it. So that's kind of where we come into play.
So your cost is not the actual unit, or is it the install?
I'm incurring the install. I'm incurring the cost of the new mic boards we put next to them. The units have been coming out of ESSER funding or district-wide funding.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Bill? Go ahead.
I think I heard at the last meeting that we have our own sewage treatment plant. Is that correct?
We do. It's awesome.
Okay. No. But I see in the budget that that we're budgeted to spend almost $29,000, or that's what the proposed budget is. Can you explain exactly what $29,000 goes to when we own it?
Okay, so which line are you looking at? Because that would be easy for me to help. We actually spend a lot more than $29,000.
It's on sewage, page 32 of the budget. It's up by 15.86%, about halfway down the page. Page 32.
32. Okay. I'm getting there. Just a little slow today. Okay. So the that sewage line has a bunch of things into it. Okay. One of the things is the cleaning of the storm drains. That's part of our. We're required to maintain all our stormwater systems, and annually we have to clean and inspect the storm drains, and that cost has gone up. A large part of that increase is actually on that storm drain side. That's gone up. The rest of those lines are replaced the pumps. I have basically the ability to replace 1 to 2 pumps a year as part of that. We also have a licensed operator who runs the plant that we pay for. So our costs are considerably, I can get back to you, Char, exactly what total costs are, but we're much higher than that when you add in all the different costs of disposal, but it is the only option we have right now. I'm very excited about the opportunity of tying into the new system we're looking at with Manchester. I would love to be out of the sewage treatment business. It'd be great. It's a pretty amazing process and that it works. And, you know, again, we've made a lot of improvements in it over the 13 years I've been here. It's running better than it ever has. But the challenge is we do discharge to the Pleasant River, which is a river that is noted for water quality concern. So the DEP would love to have us get out as well. So I'm hoping that as part of the new municipal project, we're able to tie the high school to that. Shut this plant down.
On the, just one more real quick.
Yep.
On the next page, repairs and maintenance, about halfway down. It's proposed to spend $268,000 on cardio room HVAC, door replacements for the loading dock, a new school sign, generator repairs, gym inspection and stuff. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yep, so the MIP is the cardio room in the trainer's office. The ventilation comes from the gym. I've never thought that was an appropriate design. So they're pulling air from the gym to go to those two spaces. So we have kids in a cardio room, 30 of them working in the space. Air is coming from a space that people are already in, and it's not conditioned. So you're kind of working out in a hot room. So that project there installs a rooftop unit that's going to improve filtration as well as provide conditioned air to those spaces. And there are times Casey is working with students in her space that her space is 90 degrees and hotter. Not the best environment for your to deal with your training working with kids. So that's at $65,000 for that. There is $50,000. We're replacing doors, the loading dock, as well as door 17. If you've been to door 17, you try pulling the door furthest to the left. Sometimes it doesn't open very well. So this is what I'm talking about, age of the school. We're starting to have us to do some of these things. And 50 sounds like a lot of money, but commercial doors, when you start replacing them and you replace the hardware and stuff, you'd be surprised how quickly that goes. There is $45,000 as part of a new school sign. This is a project that's probably $75,000 to $85,000. We're in the process of collecting money from other graduating classes and stuff. It will be electronic sign to replace the manual antiquated sign that's out in front of the high school now. In fact, many of you may not even know it's even dead. It's hard to see. That's where we announce things like the plays, the events going on in school, no school heavy. So that is funding towards that. The good news is that we're not paying for the whole thing. We're probably paying for close to half of it. All the other groups are adding money to make that happen. So, and finally, the last catch-all, that's all the high school R&M. So that's all the fixes that we do throughout the year. So, and again, if you think about that that building was, the time was $33 million when we built it, and $100,000 over $33 million is not a big percentage.
The other line item that jumped out at me was page 46. $125,000 for interior sprinkler system and renovation work. I'm sure it's needed because it's life safety, but could you just give some background on that?
Sure. We have a revolving renovation project to add sprinkler system to Field Down. So what our challenge was, the project was funded in 2000. This past year, we were able to bid the first part out, which is get the sprinkler main into the building, which we successfully got that done. So the nice thing is Field Down has a new water line for domestic and sprinkler into the building for the first time it's ever been built. So I'm feeling good about that, particularly when we go to start testing for lead and drinking water will be in a good place. In the process of looking at the project further, one of the things we're going to have to do to fully sprinkle it, and the state fire marshal have been there, is we have to remove all the ceilings from the building so we can properly sprinkle it. The other advantage to that is the old spline ceilings have provided a great chaseway for mice and other rodents to be in the building if they've been there. That's all going to go away and be cleaned. So $125,000 supporting that work that we're doing revolving renovation. The prices for all the bidding work from 2000 until we bid it out were significantly higher. So it's helping us make up some of that shortfall. So I wish it wasn't there. The fact is to get the work done, that's the planning that I need to finish it up.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bill. We really appreciate all your work. Up next is Mr. Hickey with technology.
Good evening, everyone. Bob Hickey, Technology Director. Thank you so much for hanging in there at the end of a very long day for everyone. So my discussion is going to mirror roughly what we talked about when we met about a month ago, because there's really been no change in my budget. So I'm $574,000 over last year, and I'm going to explain that away. So $294,802 of that is the lease payment for the replacement laptops for the high school for students and staff. And I didn't forget the questions raised by Scott and Pete about a month ago. Is now the time to replace those devices? And it is because MLTI is trying to expand the program beyond 7th and 8th grade. And so in the 23 school year, the $294,000 is a little bit cheaper because it's brought down by the support by the state to expand the program into 9th grade. The following year, in fiscal year 24, they're going to do the same thing for 10th grade. So rather than put off that purchase and fund all 4 years ourselves, we're leveraging the contribution from MLTI. It's $459 per device. With the total device is around $1,100, roughly $800 for the MacBook Air. And then there's Apple Care, case, and Jamf license to manage it, things like that. So I hope that answers your question from a month ago. I didn't forget your questions that you raised. So of the $574,000, almost $300,000 of that is that purchase. Another $130,000 for the existing lease of grade 7 and 8 laptops, because the state didn't pay the whole thing. It's the $459 of the total. And Apple Care on the purchases of grades 4, 5, and 6. That was this year as well. There's another $60,000 that we leverage outside consulting agency, systems engineering. They're the largest in the state. They have 70 engineers on staff to help us with our network issues, because we do not want to repeat what we had last fall. And we have a huge network, a huge user base, and there's not many of us on the tech staff. So every once in a while, we need some hired guns to bring in to help us out with that. So the remaining is another $43,900 for technology-related hardware in the name of redundant core switch. We are trying to get redundancy built in everywhere in the key areas that are most important. So if there is failover, and we have one core switch, we have switches all over the buildings, all over the district, but those are regional switches. The core switch deals with the firewall, and it's the main thoroughfare of data in and out of our network. So to have one of those, if it goes down, we're dead in the water, and there's no education going on anywhere, and nobody wants that. So of the totals that I've taken out from that 574, minus 294, minus 130, minus 60,000, minus 43,000, leaves us $44,754. And a lot of that is small increases in a multitude of areas. The telephone expense increased a little, about $1,200, and computer supplies. And then some of that is coming out of insurance increases for staff in that part of my operational budget. So even though on the surface, $574,000 sounds like a lot of money, is a lot of money, it is all explained away with legitimate reasons, in my opinion, but now the floor is yours, and you can tell me what I'm wrong.
Okay, I know we ask this all the time. So we're getting new computers, right? Okay, where are the old ones going? Seeing as I think everybody has one now.
Sure. Well, the oldest one's still in rotation of folks who didn't get one new anytime recently is grades 2 and 3. So they're on a year 5 machine now because they inherited things from Manchester. And so we would take the end of June 30 would be the end of their 4th year, start of their 5th year. We would rotate those into grades 2 and 3. And so we would leverage those that way and give them a year newer hardware just because we own it. And why wouldn't we give them a newer device if we could? And then,
so what do we do with the ones that they have now? We're not throwing them away, right? I mean, what do we do with those 2 grades computers that are in there that are old that they're using now?
well, we like to sit on things, as you know, till the wheels fall off and lose a couple of molecules.
Space.
Right, spares. And heaven knows, COVID, next release, remote, families that don't have a device remote, that kind of thing, we would stock it off to the side for that. Because we've leveraged things, especially iPads for little kids offsite.
Okay, my next thing is, and I don't know if it's covered on page 77, there's a lot of talk now about having strong firewalls and watch out for, people coming into your systems, et cetera. So I'm wondering what we're doing about that. And on page 77, halfway down, you have network support contract, that's brand new, $60,000.
Yes.
That is for what?
That's for support. That's the systems engineering. They come in and help us. They monitor our network. They help us with cybersecurity planning, which is a world unto itself.
Okay, so is that new this year? Because that.
It is new this year.
If I can speak to that, Marge. One problem we ran into in October when the network went down is that we did not have a contract with any sort of systems engineering company for networks. And so at that point, when you call somebody, if you're not an existing customer, then you just go to whenever they can get to you versus a contract in which there's a guaranteed amount of time in which they need to get back to you and then take care of it. So it's a maintenance item to make sure that, and we ran into some issues with core switch, with the firewall, and with other ancillary switches, which Mark did a fantastic job tracking with other people. But it was also helpful that when a new core switch came in and also the new firewall, that systems engineering could also help us pre-engineer that so that it could be plug and play. It is definitely worth the investment of having somebody, especially with what we're seeing now with ransomware and with other malware attacks, of having a group that, first of all, is making sure that we're up to date, but then also can help walk us through when we do have an issue. Because what we have learned is that we are in very difficult times because our phones now run to the network, security runs to the network. All of our internet traffic, we've become heavily dependent upon our network, and if it doesn't run, it is a very uncomfortable situation.
So is this a 1-year contract, or it's $60,000 a year? So we can
Correct.
expect to see this going forward.
Correct.
Okay, on the next page, on page 78, I'm sorry, I just have to know, what is MiFi devices?
Oh, MiFi is mobile fiber. It's a hotspot. And so we left that in the budget this year because we're trying to get away from remote instruction, as you know, and then things crop up, as you know. So we left that in there for now. And it's to support MiFi devices. We have several out now. And so some of them we're paying for with ESSER money. And so we have money set aside in there for them.
Okay, if we go to page 80, on these student repairs, this is just a question. It's not about what's in the budget, basically, other than it's 120,000. But how's that been going? Have we had many, and our parents taking the insurance out? Is it covering? How much is it covering?
My understanding is we're not making scads of money. We're not losing scads of money. It's roughly covering expenses. So
It's kind of status quo.
Our self-insured insurance pool is able to cover the expenses that are there.
Okay.
Anybody else? Mr. Hickey? Sure.
Hi. Not a specific budget question, more of a general question. Why do we use Apple computers versus other brands?
Well, many years ago, when the earth was cool and I first started at this district, we were a PC district, but the MLTI program fostering the expansion of the Apple base really had an impact on us, and we migrated over time away from PCs and towards Macs. And there's no secret in the educational community that the educational community loves Mac because of the teaching resources that were available on that platform. And also, the hardware itself is very stable. And even though it's expensive per unit cost, when we haven't been able to renew at the end of a 4-year lease, they've lasted 8-9 years. So it's actually based, the Mac OS is based on Berkeley System Development Unix. Unix has been around 30-40 years. It's rock solid. It doesn't break. It's very efficient in use of resources. So that's how we got to Apple.
Yeah, and I'm aware of the advantages from a software security standpoint with Apple products versus PC. And I know that would be almost impossibly expensive to switch to PC if the RSU ever decided to do that. The only comment I'll make is that, you know, we're preparing children for work in the real world. And the majority of companies these days, well, for many years, use PC instead of Apple-based products. Is there an opportunity, and you might not be able to answer this question, it's more of a curriculum question maybe. Is there an opportunity for children to learn, really at the high school level, to use PC instead of Apple products?
Well, the kids, I mean, we could ask Alva. They can live in any area if you want to jump in there.
Yeah, I've taken some computer science classes and some other technology classes, and we've had the opportunity to use Windows-based laptops. So there's definitely opportunities available for students to use the type of software that they need to use.
Great, thank you. That was it, thanks.
Anyone else? For Mr. Hickey? I don't see any other raised hands.
I just want to reinforce one thing that Bob said, and it's we do need to schedule a finance committee meeting, and this is one of the things I was going to talk about, is that the MLTI program, and the Apple is an option purchasing through MLTI. In the old days, back in the Angus King days, where, and then subsequent governors supporting it, but 7th and 8th grade were Apple products, and they were basically given to 7th and 8th graders outright. States transitioned to a model which, instead of doing that, is just giving you a dollar amount towards the purchase, with the hopes of providing additional funds and resources to be able to work your way up through to provide greater technology. So Bob is correct. I think it's $459 that would be applied to 9th grade this year. For next year, $459 would be applied to either a grade level below 7th grade, or you can continue to go up. So 9th grade this year, you could apply it to 10th grade, and then hopefully the following year could possibly go to 11th grade. So as we structure financing for that, it is going to have an impact. And one of the things I want to talk about is that how can we leverage that so that we maybe just are financing 3 years versus 4 years, and trying to make sure that we knock off as much as the 9th grade machines. The 4th, 5th, and 6th grade machines, I think that was either ESSER 1 of CARES money or ESSER 2 that was used to purchase those in the pandemic, and that reduced. The other thing I also want to point out in Bob's budget is that you'll notice there was a reduction last year. We paid that Apple lease early, so to help provide some savings last year with pandemic and not knowing where we were going to be with budget. So it is kind of hitting us a little bit twice. This is one of those rare cases that we're not rolling debt forward, but it was done last year consciously to make sure that we could bring in that budget as low as we could in the pandemic.
May I make a suggestion for next year? The visual chart that you put out that showed the age and the life cycle of all the machines and where everything was going to go, I always found that to be very helpful and beneficial. And I think that moving forward, that was on like page 2
Okay.
of the
I'll be there next year, Scott, I promise.
technology portion. That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. Now we welcome Mike Kelly, Transportation. Come on down.
Good evening, everyone. It's been a long day for all of us, I'm sure. And I'm here to say I have Bill beat by 1 year. This is my 14th year with you folks. So there you go, Bill. Anyways, each and every year when I come before the board, things are pretty much the same. You know, we do pretty much the same with like slight changes here and there and some programming, but essentially it is the same. I think some of the things that have changed over the years, the technology that we use and utilize and expand. And so a lot of the things that we do cause the increases in some portions of the budget as well. But in this particular year, when you start looking at the increase of $292,000, breaking that out, just the staffing portion that is around $227,000, the operational piece around $65,000. And when you look at some of the position counts that we have within the budget itself, it's kind of misleading in some respects, whereas you'll see the addition of a route coordinator. And what happened is that through negotiations and approved by the board, we had moved what was a bus driver that was utilized as a route coordinator. We pulled it was pulled from the union and put in a position of a non-union position. So that's what that reflects. What also is included in this is that Katahdin has requested an additional van driver position, which is about $39,000. And Katahdin, even though I cover their expenses for transportation purposes and their staffing, as far as the logistics within their building, that's outside of my purview. So as I understand it, as far as Katahdin is concerned, is that they have 3 lead drivers in other particular positions, and the student services that are required of them. It's putting them in a position where they have to have a full-time, it's a school year position. So we require that to be added to their portion of the budget. When you look at there was some other pieces within there, some changes that have been made. Just like the mechanic, one of the technicians had been moved out of the unit as well. So they have been moved into a regular employee account. So it makes it look like it's $58,000 increase, but it's not really a $58,000 increase. It's just moving the funds from one place to another. So it comes down to plus some salary increases. As far as the operational costs and the increases in that, it's pretty simple. It's in buses, vans, and which the buses and the vans is driven to $50,000. The software and the tablets that we implemented over the past year in the buses, just the software support increases in that, plus the cellular connectivity was about $95. The rest is just miscellaneous, which is around $55. So as you look at what we do on a daily basis, we're running around 24 bus routes, okay, plus 14 van routes. Our fleet is around 34 buses. It is 34 buses, and it's 23 vans, 5 of which go to the ground. What's interesting is I was looking at some of the annual mileage numbers, and pre-pandemic we do about 650,000 miles a year. Right now, well, as of FY21, we're down to 420,000 miles. It's hard to say where we're going this particular year. It's obviously it has increased, but some of the things that will affect it is that, like athletic trips, it's that increased somewhat, but the real impact to it is the field trip activities, which almost are still non-existent. So it's those type of things that affect it. And because of staffing issues, we usually do the late run a couple of days a week. That has not occurred this year. So we're moving forward, hopefully, to what we call the normal. So that's where we're at in a nutshell. There's some questions.
I just have one, and I don't know if it's an add or a subtract, because I can't figure it out. We're on page 170, at the very bottom is 8,400 contact tracing. I'm not doing contact tracing anymore.
Well,
or is that different?
That's a terminology that was used. It has to do with tablets. And what we did in order to capture the funding for the tablets is that's what we utilize it for. And it was the tablets itself, it was a godsend for contact tracing purposes, how we were able to track the students on and off the bus at the time that they were actually on the bus. So that is all part
That's
of
the whole user training.
Yeah, it's actually called Untitled Chapter.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Good evening. So I'm looking on your face sheet about the lease purchase for buses. And I understand kind of, but when it says lease or purchase, that confused me a little bit because my understanding was we pay for it and then the state reimburses it the next year.
Yes and no.
Okay.
It's
My surprise.
Yeah, it's lease purchase is another term for a 5-year loan on buses. So after 5 years, we pay the loan off and we get the bus. As far as
Well, can I ask you then? So it's not the case that we pay for it this year and then the state gives us the money next year?
That's correct. That does happen, but that's when you actually grant subsidy. When we put in for bus requests, we do not always receive subsidy. And because there's only so much money in the pool that the state has.
I didn't realize that.
What was a unique year last year is that we had requested 3 buses in the state because of the federal funding that they had received. Anybody that requested buses did receive subsidy.
So can you help me understand how regular is this? Are we getting a bus or buses every year as a rule? Or?
Yes, we do. And what happened when I came here many years ago, there was really no capital replacement plan in place. And there was, how we suffered as time went on is that there were large purchases made of buses for a particular year. As when they made their way through the life cycle, we had to try to replace those buses, or we had extraordinary repair expenses for those buses. So generally speaking, what we try to do is we try to go to the 2-bus, 3-bus cycle. There's some little twists and turns to that as time's going on. I think over the last 2 years, just to comment on this as well, as some of the money that we received from the federal government, we actually got some of the Volkswagen settlement money. I think in the last 2 years, we got some buses and we replaced some of the older stuff that we have. So right now, the entire fleet is in the best shape it's ever been since I've been.
The last question on vans. There's no van replacement program, I'm sure. Vans just part of our budget, right?
That's correct. And what we did before, we were actually buying vans that were about 2 years old. And what we moved to is we're buying new ones because it just works. And the longevity of those particular vans it's worth the investment.
This is my first budget, and you just happen to be the first one that I saw this. We have like health insurance, dental insurance, but then there are fringe benefits, and I wasn't sure what the differences were.
Well,
What fringe benefits do?
I'll let Chris talk about it. I can talk about it.
That would capture things like 403B contributions that would be available. Some positions may have a cell phone attached to it. I mean, that's where it'd be outside regular health insurance.
Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Long time no see.
It's been a long year for you, hasn't it?
It's been a long 2 years.
So, Chris, you have said this multiple times, and I think that it needs to be resaid again, that without our transportation, if we can't get the kids to school, we're not going to be able to operate. And so that brings me back to, I think one of the biggest challenges that we have as a school district is making sure that we can recruit and retain staff members. So I don't know if it is in the plan at all. I know that there are a lot of companies that are doing sign-on bonuses. And I think that we need to potentially go down that route for school bus drivers for next year. Because Mike was dealt a not a full deck of cards this year. And that was not of any fault of his own. It was really nobody's fault. But we all saw a mass exodus of retirees that decided that this was just going to be the year that they were going to hang up. And I think that we need to address this issue. And I think it really kind of needs to start with the transportation department. And so, Chris, I'd advocate that we try and find $10,000 somewhere in this budget to throw out two $5,000 sign-on bonuses to be paid out in increments throughout the course of the year to try and get Mr. Kelly's happy. There you go, Mike. I don't know how much good it did,
But thank you. Let me talk about things. It's over the years, it's how things have evolved. Generally speaking, we always experience an exodus of a handful of people. That's just how it is. And but we're fortunate enough that people are actually applying for positions. And so the vast majority of the people that we have on board, we have trained ourselves. And so it's come to the point where people have departed, but nobody's coming to us to backfill those positions. So that's the dilemma we're in. And who we're actually attracting, and I think this number is going to be, it tells a lot. Our average age in transportation is 62.5 years old. So that's what you're attracting. And it's just how it is. It's not unique to our school district. I can go to school bus conferences, say conferences, you go across all the rooms, and training rooms, and that's what you see. And what we're doing is we're competing with neighboring districts for the same people. And what happens and what makes it more difficult is that a bus driver's position is a good supplemental income, very much, but it's not going to support a family, especially a young family. And the other piece that makes it more difficult is that the people, or our schedule is a split schedule. So if people don't live relatively close to where we operate from, they're not going to be commuting 20, 30 miles a couple times a day, especially with fuel prices are now. So that actually compounds our issue. So it's not as clean as some people may think at times. It gets much more complex, and so that's just the nature of the beast as to what we're dealing with. And even what makes it more difficult too is that when you have that age demographic, is that you tend to bring people in sometimes just because that's how it is. And comment on myself is that you're not necessarily as healthy, and so we have absenteeism, and that so we have to backfill with that on a daily basis. If we don't have subs, it just makes that problem.
Just to follow up on that, do your bus drivers qualify for health insurance?
They do. Yes, these we actually the school year positions all have health insurance. And we have so we pay that 100%. What we try to attract, what I've done is that we have on-site spares, and we usually have a pool. I think even was at some point last year we were pretty robust. We have probably 4 or 5. And what we do is when people depart, is that we go to that pool of people and give them a first shot at those what we call benefit positions. And so as we speak, we have none of those people as far as the spare positions. And so the event of any absences, the only people that remain to drive the vehicles is my 2 people that work in the office with me, my admin assistant, the route coordinator, and the the assistant and the lead technician. So we have those 4 people that are driving. And I've never experienced them driving as much as they have this past school year.
Thank you.
It seems that often Scott and I are tag teaming each other in our commentary. But before I get to the employment stuff, which is my specialty. I have a question about buses. So I'm looking down through on page 173, and I did some quick math. You've got 16 buses that are in year 505.
Right.
And then I see you have 3 new leases for replacement buses. So my guess is that just because they're at year 505 doesn't mean that's the end of their life expectancy.
No, what that means is that the law, as I said, I described it, that's when they're coming off the lease payment.
Okay.
Purchase. So we own the bus.
Oh,
The
okay.
bus was only 5 years old.
Okay.
So we own it now.
All right.
So
Well, I
that's-
come from commercial trucking, so if a truck's 5 years old, that's ancient.
Right.
So,
And that's part of how we build the capital replacement plan too, is that when we come into the new budget cycle, when we start releasing those previous leases, that's the available funding to help underwrite the cost of the new buses.
okay. So the 3 that you have in the budget, is that to replace 3 that are currently being used?
Yeah, they are, generally, those buses are what we put in a spare status.
Okay, all right, thank you. But on to employment. So I know that there's at least one bus driver in Raymond that was driving bus when I was in, I hate to say it, grammar school, which was more than a couple years ago. And so going along with what you previously said is the average age is in the early 60s. So what are you forecasting for turnover, either through natural turnover or retirement in the next year or 2, so that we as a board can make better decisions on how we're going to get you staffed? Because you also commented that currently you have no spares.
Right.
So going along with Scott's request for coming up with a plan for offering hiring bonuses if we find it necessary based on the employment pool, what's your forecast for turnover in the next couple of years?
This is, generally speaking, I don't have an exact number. I haven't averaged it out over the years. I would dare say we could at least expect 2 or 3 people to do. That's one reason. They may go on to another school district, or they just retire. There's some of the drivers, when I say average, we have some drivers that are in the 70s.
Mhm.
And so the likelihood is us losing 3 or
Okay, 3 per year?
on average, I would say that would be.
Okay. You also mentioned that that you've done in-house training in the past.
Right.
And recently, the DOT, Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulation rules came up with a rule in February that you can no longer train your own CDL drivers unless you're and you have a program that's approved and affiliated and all that fun stuff. So do we have a program that is, or access to one, or are we possibly looking at paying for people to go get their CDL?
What you're referring to is the ELDT, entry-level driver training.
Mhm.
And that took effect, I believe it was February 22nd. We have 2 staff members that are trained, we're certified as a training center. We have the whole curriculum. We're actually trying to convince some van drivers to actually let them actually come in and just come through the training program. It's a pilot project, but we have the whole, we've been also accepted as a training site. We have 2 trainers on site.
Okay, so great. That will save us a lot of money.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, this is a quickie. With the conversation that has been going on, and you've been doing this a long time, I know, what would you see as an enticement, if any, to get more bus drivers? Or do you just plod along?
I process this a lot, especially like 3 o'clock in the morning. I thought about it a lot. That happens. And I don't think there's a single answer to that particular question, because I brought up some of the challenges that we face at the start. I appreciate that signing bonus would help greatly, but it's almost like a double-edged sword too. in that when you start providing hiring bonuses, the incumbents that you have as a workforce feel like they're being disrespected. Because it was very generous for this board to give the retention bonus and the appreciation bonus to the staff. But sometimes, unfortunately, that becomes a short-term satisfier. And as you go forward, some folks say, well, what can you do for me today? So I start seeing that and say, well, why am I here? So those are the things we struggle with constantly. It's just trying to come up with ideas, trying to get referrals from folks. And I think the other thing what happens too, and I deal with this a lot, the folks come to me and they already have their CPLs and they're looking to come from another district. The problem is that where they're coming from, depending where they're coming from, their hourly rate may be greater. They're on a 40-hour schedule, and things of that sort. So that's where we've lost a bunch of people, is because of those particular things. And it's, like I said, it's usually survey various districts, and the hourly rate varies, the benefits vary. So they may have some things better than us, and we have some things that are better than them, but generally speaking, it comes down to the hours of work that we have. So that's another challenge that we face. And without belaboring this, when I first came here 14 years ago, we were paying drivers 35 hours a week minimum. And if they were working field trips or athletic events, they were being paid above that. That was pared down to 35 hours. It was a different formula as far as how we would compensate them. So they were paying 35 hours minimum, plus there was a gap as to how much we compensated over that amount. That was eliminated. So to this day, we're down to 28.5 hours. So that's it. As time has gone on, it worked at the time, but it's coming back to bite us.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
One follow-up question. You just made the comment that, it used to be 35 hours, now it's down towards 28. And sometimes people are looking for more consistent hours or more hours full-time, quote unquote, full-time. Is there, and I guess this is a question for Chris, is there any opportunity to have folks that are interested in having more hours to do other stuff within the district when they're not driving a bus? Like custodial work or something like that?
There's some
Working in the
possibility,
kitchen?
and this is, I think what Mike was kind of getting to. There's some individuals who also like the 30-hour week that's provided versus the 35, which they have to work in another district with shared positions. Custodial bus drivers are in other districts, and we do hear from people that they left the district because they had a custodial bus driver. So I think part of this is figuring out what that sweet spot is as far as number of hours. I know, especially now as we hopefully get back to field trip season and to some of the other things, that we can start pushing hours up through some of those other means. But I think one of the things that's just been eye-opening for me over the last 3 years, as Mike has taught me a lot about school transportation, is that I think for every driver, it's something different. For some of them, it's the quality of the equipment. For some, it's the support that they receive through the office or through the garage, that they're never having to worry about their piece of equipment being down or never running into issues. For some, it might be their run. For some, it might be that I only have to work this number of hours. For some, it might be more hours. It's so personalized across all the different drivers that we have. And so I know Mike and I have had conversations on what is that sweet spot to make sure that you are. But there are places where there are bus driver custodians. And some like it and some don't.
Anyone else? Seeing none, thank you, Mike.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. And finally, last but not least, Jeannie Riley, school nutrition.
Oh my goodness,
Don't speak for my benefit.
No, it's on. Hi. Good evening. Thanks for
having me here tonight. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about my budget and what's happening in school nutrition. As many of you know, school nutrition does operate differently. We don't operate out of the general fund. We are a revenue generating budget. Money comes to us from students and from the federal government and from the state as well. In our budget this year, the biggest increase is probably due to turning 4 positions from part-time positions into full-time positions, or 30 hours a week, so full-time school year. So not only are those people getting more hours, but they're also now have the opportunity to get benefits. That was really necessary due to the increase in participation from all school meals being available for free this year. Has really had a really great effect on our participation. We're feeding 50% more students at breakfast and about 30% more students at lunch. And it was really unanticipated because last year when budget was being decided upon, we didn't really know what this year would look like, whether school meals would be free or not. And then the decision was made in April or May, and we came in and also being hybrid last year, we really had no way to fully forecast what would happen. When we got here, our staff were just really nonstop, and they're still really nonstop. So we've made 4 kitchen helper positions full-time, and they're not added positions. They were really taking people from 5 hours a day. They were actually working more than 5 hours a day anyway. And so we really made it legitimately a 6-hour-a-day position for those 4 people, 2 at primary school, 1 at Jordan Small, and 1 at Raymond Elementary School. So the benefits that those people now have access to has really increased our budget. The other very big increase in our budget is the cost of supplies, food and supplies. And part of that equation is that when you're making 30% more lunches or 50% more breakfasts, it takes more food. So add to that the cost of supplies and the supply chain disruptions that we're experiencing. I know I talked about pineapple when I was in front of you the last time. A case of pineapple has gone from $38 to now $82. A case of gloves, we purchase cooperatively with all other districts in York and Cumberland County. And so we try to anticipate what we're going to need, and that is obviously impossible over the last 2 years, but we say we'll use, collectively this many cases of gloves, for instance. And gloves, we were getting such a great price on gloves, like $20 for a case of lots of gloves. $20 for lots of gloves. And the price now is closer to $70 or $80 for gloves. And we are using gloves, of course, all the time, changing our gloves all the time to maintain safe food handling standards. So the cost of supplies is just unbelievable and unanticipatable. And then we know soon we're going to be getting hit with fuel surcharges on all of our deliveries, because that's just going to be the next big thing. I just returned from a national conference where some districts that were at that conference have already opened their bids for next year, and they're looking at they were saying 27 to 38% increase in prices over last year. So Stacy and I, when we met, we tried to anticipate some of those costs increasing in our budget. It's really tricky to anticipate fully where that will land, So I think that's pretty much all of where the increase comes, and I'll take any questions.
Anybody? Jeannie? No? Mike?
Sorry, guys. So I understand the concept of free breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a qualification for that. And my wife's an educator, so I know one of her jobs as a principal is chasing signatures and can never get them and all that. So, and you probably said this a few weeks ago and I just spaced it, but in terms of reduced So some kids are paying a reduced fee? Or are we paying, is everybody getting a free meal?
This year, all students are eating meals for free.
Yeah.
Under COVID-related waivers. We're operating under a program called the Seamless Summer Option, which has been really amazing for us because not only are all children eating for free, but it also kicked in a higher level of reimbursement. So the normal rate of reimbursement for a meal would have been for a free student meal. So a student who in previous years would have qualified for free lunch would have been this year about $3.50. And right now we're getting almost $1 more than that per meal. And we're getting that for every single meal. So we don't have parents who maybe are paying or maybe choosing not to pay or unable to pay, but not qualifying for free reduced price meals. We're getting paid the full free reimbursement for every single meal. And it's almost $1 more than it is previously under the National School Lunch Program. And it's really crazy.
So on the front page here, you've got reduced. Is
So
that just breaking the kids down by ability, or what is that?
Moving into next year is going to be a totally different thing because we're still in these waivers. Part of why I was in Washington was advocating for one year extension on the waivers that has not been approved, and it doesn't look very promising. The state of Maine, however, has a new law that is all children will be eating for free, but the funding will change. And so students will still need to fill out, and it would be almost imperative that students fill out a free and reduced meal application because where the reimbursement will come from will change. So students who qualify for free meals, all of that reimbursement will come from the from the federal government. Students who qualify for reduced price meals, most of that reimbursement will come from the federal government, but some of that is going to come out of the Governor Mills budget. Some of that money will come from Governor Mills. And so students who qualify as full price paying students, even though they're not paying full price, all of the funds for those meals will be coming out of Governor Mills's budget.
Okay, I got that last time we spoke. So my next comment is really not aimed at you. It's aimed at us. I was on the school board. I've said this at least once before here, I think in the 90s here. And I remember when the town said, hey, the school should have a social worker. And we kind of thought, ooh, we were really kind of cautious back then. School shouldn't be taking on all this other stuff, you know? And then I was in the legislature and I was on the education committee, and every idea is a good idea. You know, we should do EpiPens and we should do first aid, and and all of a sudden you're like, wow, we just added 2 weeks. And I won't, this is too late to go into my diatribe. I've done it in my head so many times. But I get a little concerned that, on one level, we want parent involvement and all that, and the other level, schools kind of does everything. Schools, transportation, schools, feeding everybody. And again, this is not you're doing a great job. I'm just saying for us that if we kind of provide everything, why should parents? And I wonder, I read about, obesity in this country, and I wonder how many kids who are getting a free breakfast here, they're getting a free breakfast at home too. So these are just crazy things that go in my mind, that is it possible the school system can do too good a job? And again, it's certainly not directed at you. You're doing a great job. But it's just what bounces in my head at 9 o'clock at night when I'm actually not here.
I'd really love to comment. So schools provide so many things. We provide children with transportation. We just heard from the transportation department. We provide them with technology. Every child in this district, or most children in this district, have some sort of device that they're using. Why do we draw the line at food? I understand that, and many parents, their parents are welcome to send a meal with their child. If we're providing meals for free, it doesn't mean that your child has to eat that meal. It means it's available for free to any child who needs to eat or wants to eat, for any family who chooses to take part in that benefit. It seems to me that you shouldn't draw the line with food. Food is a basic human right. And we can walk through the cafeteria and see that children bring lunches that their parents have asked them to pack for themselves when they're 5 years old. And a five-year-old cannot pack an adequate lunch. And that might seem unreal, but it happens all the time. Now that child can come and get a meal to supplement what he brought at home, from home. So I personally believe that we provide so many other services for children that we shouldn't, right, but we shouldn't be drawing the line at food
I'm
because.
not picking on food.
No,
And
no, I
I certainly
understand.
did not mean to say kids not getting fed. I mean, I think that's a wonderful thing. I'm just saying, the more things the schools do, and again, please, this is not, I know I pushed a button, I apologize. I'm really talking to us. The
been
more
a
things we
long
do,
week for me.
then what, if the school's gonna give a free lunch, why am I gonna teach my kid how to pack a lunch? I mean, it's just something that bounces in my head. Because then I hear sometimes people in schools say, well, where are the parents? Why aren't the parents doing anything? Well, if we're going to do, and again, please, it's not about you. It's about computers and it's about everything. I mean, I would hope that I would have sent my kids to school, and I did, with money in their pocket, food. Some people can't do it. And I think it's a blessing. If someone really can't do it, that we provide that for them. But I just wonder what we're training people by doing everything for them.
Well, we believe also that by serving a healthy meal to students in this district, we're also teaching children about nutrition. You know, in normal times, we believe that we're using the cafeteria as a classroom and we're teaching children more. And we believe that by teaching children to eat well, that we're also teaching families to eat well. We're providing families with recipes and ideas and children access this in the month of March. We eat our way through the alphabet, and we're giving children access to all kinds of different foods that they've never tried before. And I've had many families every year. My child has never eaten jicama before, quinoa before. Jicama's tomorrow. And the high school kids are also we're having jambalaya at the high school. But by doing that, we believe that we're not just teaching children how to eat and providing children with nutritious food and lessons in nutrition, but we're also, because we have a district chef on staff who in normal times, again, gets in the classroom and down and dirty with the kids, cooking with the kids and gardening with the kids and all that. It's more than just healthy food. It's teaching children how to eat and also teaching families how to eat.
And again, I apologize. I was not looking to push it. I'm from a different era, and I was allowed to go out and run around the streets, and today kids don't seem to be able to do that. So I just wonder what changed, and I just get concerned. I think you're doing a wonderful job, and I'm talking to us.
Yeah, you didn't push a button. I just
You're
got
very
back
proud. I
from
mean,
Washington
everything you're
where
doing is
I'm
great.
on my spiel, I guess.
No, I think like the nutrition is awesome. And that is stuff I don't ever eat taught.
Yeah.
But I wonder.
Thank you, Jessica.
I don't have a question because, well, it's food. But I just wanted to share because my oldest daughter, who is just about as picky as I am for eating, came home the other day and was so excited that she had sauteed asparagus and she now likes it. So I just wanted to say that and as a working mom, working family, it's made it so nice to not have to do that stuff. It's one less thing I have to do at home. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you.
Okay. Personal experience, because I go in the kitchen there at the school. Let me tell you, they work their fannies off. And if you want to see some cooking, to see and I call them buckets. I mean, there's these big, humongous tubs of food that they're preparing. And I am so proud of what they've been able to do because we all know if you go shopping and everybody goes shopping, it's very hard to buy food nowadays. Because we run the backpack program, which has been, Jeannie's helped a lot on that one because that's very difficult because we can't get the food. They can't order it. And I think Jeannie's folks and Jeannie and the chef have done super job of being able to give kids meals that are healthy for them, that they'll eat. I have grandchildren that go there, the same thing. They are eating things they've never ever eaten before because Chef Ryan and then Chef Sam before that have done a good job of really introducing these kids to what good, healthy eating is all about. So Jeannie, thank you so, so much. We're very proud.
Thank you.
So much better than what.
Just the one other thing, I just want to point out that, first of all, Jeannie is not only a leader in RSU 14 for food service, she's a leader in the state of Maine and a leader in the nation for what food service should be and what a high quality program should be and the different elements of it. But the piece I also want to remind the board and the public is that Jeannie's buying more than food. And so within her budget, she's also covering the cost of the equipment to heat that food, to clean the dishes. And so that is something that as we work through, and Bill was talking about capital budget and older buildings, we do need to be mindful of that. We do have some older kitchens that have some older equipment that we are going to need to set some money aside in the very near future because it's not, can't go to Lowe's and buy a dishwasher.
And it does take actually more equipment to cook more meals. So, you know, our ovens are really being maxed out. Our dishwashers are being, you know, everything is being maxed out because our kitchens weren't really built to provide the number of meals that we're currently providing, which is a good problem to have, but a complex problem to have.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jeannie. We appreciate
You're
your time.
welcome. Thank you.
That concludes our cost centers this evening. I do not see any public that we can talk about or have them come before us. So we're going to move on to item number 13, report of the secretary. Motion, please.
I move to approve the minutes of the March 1st, 2022 meeting.
Second.
Public comment? No. Board discussion? No. All those in favor? Thank you. Another motion, please.
I move to approve the minutes of the March 2nd, 2022 meeting.
Second.
Public comment? No. Board discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Thank you. Committee reports. Al, anything? Perfect.
Two quick things. Number one, the one acts are actually going to happen this year, which was kind of surprising. It's not going to be open to the public, unfortunately, but those are happening later this month. So that'll be super cool. And also, I just wanted to kind of talk about what I've been experiencing with the mask optional situation starting Monday. And I haven't experienced anything negative at all. I think it's been overall a really positive shift, and I'm really happy it's been that way.
Great, thanks, Al. It's good to have the student point of view here. Finance?
Has not met.
Facilities?
Facilities has not met, but we have a meeting coming up next Wednesday.
Tomorrow night one.
She was asking about facilities.
Oh, I'm sorry. Facilities / middle school construction. Combo, it's a combo.
Oh, no, you did. Yeah, I'm being very specific there.
Okay. Well,
Middle school building committee is meeting tomorrow via Zoom.
very good. Okay. Policy, we have not met. We're scheduled in a couple of weeks. Curriculum, nothing. Adult ed, nothing. Voc, nothing. I think we've done it, ladies and gentlemen. May I have a motion, please?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Good night.